She stood on my porch with a folder in her hand and said, "You don't live here anymore." Behind her, a moving truck was already backed into my driveway. My locks were changed, my nameplate was gone, and a bright red "Sold" sign was stuck in my front yard like I was already erased. I had just landed 10 minutes ago. I was still holding my duffel bag, 12 months overseas, dust still on my boots. I looked at her and asked, calm, "Why is there a moving truck at my house?" She smiled like she had been waiting for this moment. "This property was seized by the HOA for unpaid violations. It's been legally sold. You need to leave before I call the police." Her name was Linda Harper, HOA president, self-appointed queen of Maple Creek Estates. Everyone called her Karen behind her back, but never to her face. I slowly walked past her and tried my key again. It didn't fit. New lock. "My wife and son are inside," I said. She tilted her head. "Your wife moved out weeks ago." She couldn't pay the fines. "You people should really read your mail. You people." I felt that one. But I didn't react, not yet. 2 men from the moving company were carrying my couch out like I was already dead. My neighbor across the street was filming from behind his curtain. No one stepped out. No one said a word. "I never received any notice," I said quietly. She opened the folder and waved some papers in my face. 4 violations, unapproved flag, wrong shade of fence paint, grass height, and an unauthorized security camera facing the street. You ignored all warnings, so we took action. "That flag," I said slowly, "is the American flag," she shrugged. It was too large. It was lowering property value. I almost laughed at that. Almost. And the security camera? Illegal under HOA privacy code? I looked at her. Really looked at her. "You mean the camera that recorded you walking into my yard 3 times while I was deployed?" Her smile flickered for half a second. Then she clapped her hands. "Officers should be here any minute." Right on cue, a black SUV turned into the street. No police lights, just dark windows. 2 men stepped out wearing tactical vests. No clear badges, no marked car. One of them pointed at me. "Sir, you're trespassing on private property." Private property. I looked at the house. The porch swing I built with my son. The oak tree we planted the day he was born. My chest felt tight, but my voice stayed steady. "This is my property," I said. The man shook his head. "Not anymore," Karen crossed her arms. "See? I told you. You should have handled your fines." I slowly set my duffel bag down on the ground. "Can I see a court order?" The fake officer looked annoyed. "Sir, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Fake. I noticed it then. No department name, no body cams, no unit numbers on the SUV, just patches that looked printed yesterday. And then my phone buzzed, 1 text, from my wife. "Baby, don't panic, stay calm. I'm 3 minutes away." 3 minutes. Karen stepped closer to me. "If you resist, we will have you arrested." "For what?" I asked. "For breaking into a home that no longer belongs to you." One of the movers dropped a box near the sidewalk. It broke open. My son's drawing spilled out onto the concrete. Crayons scattered. A paper with "Welcome Home, Dad" written in big blue letters fluttered in the wind. That's when something shifted inside me. Not anger. Focus. I bent down, picked up the drawing, folded it carefully, and slipped it into my pocket. Then I looked straight at her and said softly, "You made one big mistake." She smirked. "And what's that?" "You tried to steal a soldier's home while his cameras were still recording." Her face didn't change, but her eyes did. And that's when a second SUV turned onto the street. This one had lights. Real ones. The blue and red lights bounced off every window on the street. Curtains moved. Doors cracked open. People who were silent 5 minutes ago were suddenly very interested. Karen's smile faded. "Oh, good," she said quickly. "They're finally here to remove him." But when the real patrol car stopped, the officer who stepped out didn't look at me first. He looked at her. "Ma'am," he said, calm but firm, "we received a report of possible fraud and unlawful eviction at this address." Her mouth opened, closed. "Fraud? No, I'm the HOA president. This property was legally seized." The officer glanced at the black SUV and the 2 men in tactical vests. "And who are they?" The taller one answered fast. "Private security hired by the HOA. Company name?" the officer asked. Silence. Karen jumped in. They're licensed. I have paperwork. Great, the officer said. Let's see it. I stayed quiet. Just watched. At that exact moment, another car turned the corner. Not police. Not HOA, a dark gray sedan. My wife stepped out. She didn't run. She didn't yell. She walked straight toward me with a tablet in her hand, calm, focused. Karen's eyes narrowed. You moved out. You signed relocation papers. My wife stopped right in front of her. No, I didn't. She turned the tablet around and held it up for the officer. Security footage. Clear. High resolution. Time-stamped. Karen walking onto our porch 2 weeks ago. Taking pictures. Taping a notice to the door. Then coming back the next night and removing it. The officer looked from the screen to Karen. You removed the notice? Karen blinked fast. That must be edited. My wife swiped again. Another clip. The same two security. Men unloading a sold sign from the back of their SUV 3 days ago. No court order posted. No sheriff present. Just them hammering it into my lawn at night. The shorter fake officer shifted his weight. You said the property was seized, the real officer said slowly. Under what statute? Karen's voice cracked for the first time. HOA bylaws section 14.3, HOAs. Can issue fines, the officer replied. They cannot seize property without court foreclosure. She looked at the fake security guys like they were supposed to fix this. They didn't move. I finally spoke. Would you like to see the county record? The officer nodded. I pulled out my phone and opened the official county property site. I had checked it on the plane when my wife sent that first strange message earlier. Owner Marcus Reed. No lines, no foreclosure, no transfer. Still mine. The officer took a slow breath. Ma'am, this house was never sold. Karen's face went pale. But we voted. You can't vote to steal someone's home, my wife said quietly. That line hung in the air. One of the fake officers tried to slide toward the SUV. The real cop noticed. Sir, stay where you are. Another patrol car pulled up behind the first. Now the neighbors were fully outside. Phones up, recording everything. Karen's voice rose. This is harassment. I was protecting property value. I stepped forward just a little. By selling my house while I was deployed? She turned to me. You abandoned it. I was serving overseas. And your grass was over 3 inches. That actually made a few neighbors whisper. The second real officer approached the fake security men. IDs. They handed over cards. The officer examined them, then looked up slowly. These aren't valid state security licenses. The taller one tried to talk fast. We were hired in good faith. Step away from the vehicle, the officer ordered. Karen looked like she might faint. But the biggest twist hadn't even started yet. My wife stepped closer to the first officer. There's more. He nodded for her to continue. She tapped the screen again. This time it wasn't our camera footage. It was a bank transfer record. 3 days ago, a deposit into an account under the name Harper Consulting. Amount $18,500. Memo. Maple Creek property, fast close. The officer looked at Karen. Did you personally receive funds from a property sale? She shook her head too quickly. No, that's a consulting fee. For a house you didn't own? My wife asked. Karen's breathing got heavy. One neighbor finally spoke up from across the street. Mr. Collins, retired Marine. Linda, you told us the bank took his house. She whipped around. That's what I was told. By who? He asked. She didn't answer. The officer turned to me. Sir, were you aware of any foreclosure proceedings? No. Any court summons? No. Any unpaid fines exceeding state threshold for lien action? No. Karen tried again. He ignored multiple violations. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small folder. Deployment papers, military orders, proof that I had notified the HOA before leaving, certified mail receipts, signed delivery confirmations. She had signed for them. The officer studied the signature. This yours, ma'am? She stared at it. Silence. The fake security men were now in handcuffs. One of the fake security guys suddenly blurted out, She told us it was a legal foreclosure. We were just hired to secure the property. Karen spun toward him. Shut up. But it was too late. The second officer tightened the cuffs and said, You can explain that downtown. The street was completely silent now, except for the sound of phones, recording in the soft hum of police radios. Even the movers had stopped. One of them slowly set my TV back down on the lawn, like he didn't want to be part of this anymore. The first officer turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, did you file a foreclosure action through county court?" She swallowed. The HOA board voted. "That's not what I asked." Her voice dropped. "No, and did you advertise this property for sale?" She hesitated. The officer repeated, slower. "Did you advertise this property for sale?" "Yes." A quiet wave moved through the neighbors, shock, whispering. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Karen pointed at me like this was somehow my fault. "He broke rules." He thought he was above everyone because he was in the military. I felt that one too, but I didn't react. "I don't think I'm above anyone," I said calmly. "I just don't think you're above the law." That line landed. The officer nodded slightly. "Ma'am, at minimum this appears to be fraud, unlawful eviction attempt, and impersonating law enforcement through hired unlicensed security." "I didn't impersonate anyone," she snapped. "You presented them as officers. They had vests." The officer didn't respond to that. He simply said, "Please place your hands behind your back." Her face drained of color. "This is insane," she whispered. "You can't arrest the HOA president." The officer's tone didn't change. "Watch me." As he cuffed her, she looked straight at me. Not angry now, not powerful, just desperate. "You did this," she said. I shook my head slowly. "No, you did." The cuffs clicked shut. That sound, I will never forget it. But just when it felt like it was over, another black SUV turned into the street. Not police, not movers. This one had a real estate company. Logo on the side, a man in a suit stepped out, holding a folder, confused. He looked at the police cars, the crowd, Karen in cuffs. "What's going on?" he asked. The officer turned. "Who are you?" "I'm David Lang from Lang & Pierce Realty. We closed on this property this morning." My wife and I looked at each other. "Closed?" The officer frowned. "Closed how?" David opened his folder. "Cash buyer. Title transfer recorded at 9:12 a.m. My stomach dropped. "That's not possible," I said. He handed the officer a copy of what looked at me. "Did you sign this?" "No." My wife stepped closer and studied it. "That's not even close." David looked pale. "We ran it through title search." "It cleared." The officer asked, "Who authorized the sale?" David pointed slowly at Karen. She presented herself as acting under HOA seizure authority. The crowd gasped. Karen's eyes went wide. "I never signed anything." The officer held up the forged deed. "This signature matches the ID used at closing." "What ID?" she demanded. David flipped pages nervously. "Driver's license copy. Social Security verification." The officer looked at him sharply. "You verified this through the state database?" "Yes, it came back valid." My wife's expression changed. That calm look she gets when something clicks. "Show me the license copy," she said. David hesitated, then handed it over. She studied it for 5 seconds, then turned the screen toward the officer. That's not her. It was Karen's face, but younger. Different haircut, different birth date, different middle name. The officer looked at Karen. "Ma'am, is this your ID?" She stared at it like she had never seen it before. "No." The officer's jaw tightened. "Then who used your identity to sell this property?" The entire street went silent again, because now, this wasn't just HOA abuse, this was bigger. Way bigger. The second officer spoke quietly into his radio. "We may have identity fraud layered on top of real estate fraud." David, the realtor, looked shaken. "We wired the funds this morning. 18,000 went to Harper Consulting. The remaining balance went to an escrow account." My wife's eyes narrowed. "What escrow account?" He flipped another page. "Liberty Title Services." The officer's expression changed instantly. "That company was shut down last year," he said. David's face went white. "What?" "It was under investigation for forged deeds and veteran-targeted property scams. Veteran-targeted." The air felt heavy. Karen's breathing got faster. "I don't know anything about that." The officer looked at her carefully. "Then you might want to start talking." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't random. This wasn't about grass height. This wasn't about a flag. Someone had used Karen, or she had partnered with someone bigger. Either way, this was organized. My wife stepped closer to me and whispered, "Remember the Johnsons?" I did. Black couple 2 streets over. Their house had mysteriously gone into short sale last year while they were dealing with medical bills. They moved out quietly. No one questioned it. And now, the officer asked Karen one more time, softer now. "Who approached you?" She shook her head. "Did someone promise you a cut?" Silence. He leaned closer. "Because right now, you're the one going down for this." Her eyes darted around the street. Neighbors filming, police listening, her fake authority gone. And then, she broke. "A man came to a board meeting 3 months ago," she said, voice shaking. "He said there was a legal loophole for abandoned properties. Said we could clear out problem homes." "Faster! Name!" the officer demanded. "I don't know his real name. He said to call him Grant." "Last name?" She swallowed. "Pierce." David, the realtor, froze. "Pierce," he repeated slowly. The officer turned to him. "Problem?" David looked like he might pass out. "My brokerage partner's last name is Pierce." The whole street went dead quiet. David whispered, "But he's out of town." The officer didn't blink. "Call him." David pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. The officer asked, "Location?" David looked at his tracking. His voice cracked. He's in Maple Creek." Everyone turned slowly. Because at the end of the street, another car engine started, and a black sedan began to move. The black sedan didn't speed off. It rolled forward slowly, like the driver was hoping no one would notice. But every phone on the street turned toward it at the same time. The officer raised his hand. "Block that vehicle!" One patrol car pulled forward. The other reversed slightly, cutting off the exit. The sedan stopped in the middle of the road. For a second, no one moved. Then the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, wearing sunglasses and a calm expression like this was just a small mistake. David's voice shook. "That's him. That's Andrew Pierce." Pierce looked at the scene. Karen in cuffs, fake security detained, neighbors recording, and forced a smile. "What seems to be the issue, officers?" he asked smoothly. The first officer didn't smile back. "Step away from the vehicle." Pierce raised his hand slightly. "Of course." He glanced at Karen. That one look said everything. Not confusion, not surprise. Recognition. Karen looked away. The officer approached him. "You involved in a property transfer at this address?" Pierce adjusted his sunglasses. "I'm a real estate investor. Everything I do is legal. Through a closed title company?" Pierce paused just a little too long. David stepped forward. "You told me Liberty Title was reopened under new management." Pierce didn't look at him. "It was." The officer said calmly, "It wasn't." Pierce's jaw tightened. My wife stepped closer to me and whispered, "He's calculating." She was right. Pierce wasn't panicking. He was thinking. Then he tried one last move. "This man's property had multiple violations," Pierce said, pointing at me. "The HOA had the right to pursue remedies, not foreclosure without court." "Order," the officer replied. Pierce shrugged slightly. Maybe paperwork moved faster than expected. The officer held up the forged deed. "That's not paperwork moving fast. That's fraud." For the first time, Pierce's calm cracked. "It's just a signature dispute," he said. I stepped forward. "No," I said quietly. "It's a crime." He looked at me like I was finally worth seeing. "You don't understand how these things work," he said. "I understand enough," I replied. "You targeted deployed homeowners." A small shift went through the crowd. Pierce smirked faintly. "That's a serious accusation." My wife lifted her tablet again. "We checked public records on the way here." She turned the screen toward the officers. 4 homes, all owned by military families, all temporarily vacant during deployment, all processed through Liberty Title, all connected to HOA complaints filed within weeks before abandonment claims. The officer's face hardened. Pierce looked at Karen sharply. She shook her head. "You said it was legal," Pierce snapped quietly. "You signed the board vote. And you promised it was protected." she shot back. The officer stepped between them. That's enough. He turned to Pierce. And you promised it was protected, she shot back. The officer stepped between them. That's enough. He turned to Pierce. You're being detained pending investigation for fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and attempted unlawful property transfer. Pierce laughed once, short, disbelief mixed with ego. You have no idea who you're talking to. The officer didn't react. Hands behind your back. When the cuffs closed around Pierce's wrists, something shifted on that street. Not just justice, exposure. Neighbors began whispering names. Remember the Alvarez family? What about the Thompsons? This explains everything. One woman started crying quietly. Her brother had lost his house last summer. Pierce looked around and realized the game was over. Not because of me. Because people were watching. Because everything was recorded. Because he underestimated one thing. He judged the wrong homeowner. As officers walked Karen and Pierce toward separate patrol cars, Karen suddenly turned toward me. You think you won? She said, voice shaking. The HOA will still fine you. I looked at her calmly. No, I said. The HOA is about to get audited. That one line spread through the crowd fast. The second officer approached me. Sir, we're going to need full copies of your footage. You'll have it, my wife answered. He nodded respectfully. Thank you for your service. I gave a small nod back. But this wasn't about service. It was about something else. Property. Freedom. Standing on your own land without someone trying to erase you. The movers slowly began carrying my furniture back inside. One of them looked embarrassed. We were told it was a clean sale. I know, I said. David stood there in shock. I didn't know, he repeated quietly. I swear. The officer looked at him. You'll be giving a statement. David nodded quickly. As patrol cars pulled away with Karen and Pierce inside, the entire neighborhood stood silent. The red sold sign was still in my yard. I walked over to it, pulled it out of the ground, snapped it across my knee, and tossed it into the back of the abandoned fake security. SUV. A few neighbors clapped softly, not loud, just enough. Mr. Collins stepped forward and extended his hand. Should have known better than to let her run wild. I shook his hand. You didn't know, I said. But we should have, he replied. That hit deeper than anything else. Silence protects bullies. Noise exposes them. My son ran out of the house then, tears in his eyes, and hugged my legs tight. Dad, I thought we lost our home. I knelt down and held him close. No one takes what we built, I whispered. My wife stood beside us, strong as ever. She looked at me and said quietly, 10 minutes. I smiled faintly. 10 minutes, I repeated. 10 minutes after trying to steal my house, their entire scam collapsed. And the craziest part? If I had landed 1 hour later, it might have worked. As the sun started to set, neighbors gathered in small groups talking, phones buzzing, posts already going viral, HOA president arrested in veteran property scam. The board members would be next. The audits would start. Liberty Title would be reopened, this time by federal investigators. And every family who lost a home would finally get answers. I stood in my driveway looking at the oak tree we planted the day my son was born. Still standing, still rooted, just like us. I didn't fight overseas to come home and lose my house to paperwork thieves. And I didn't stay calm today because I was weak. I stayed calm because truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs proof. And proof was recording the whole time. The next morning, the American flag was still flying. Same size, same place, higher than ever. And no one complained about the grass again.